Hello friends and welcome to my channel. Friends, today we are going to discuss William Wordsworth as a critic. So who was William Wordsworth? He was the leading poet and critic of the Romantic Age in England. He was born on 7th April 1770 and he died on 23rd April 1850. During the last 7 years of his career, he was the poet laureate in England. Friends, William Wordsworth, as I said, is considered to be a very leading poet and critic of the Romantic Age in England. In fact, he was the chief force behind the Romantic revival in English poetry. So, Romanticism during the times of Wordsworth came as a reaction to Neoclassicism. So first let us try to understand Neoclassicism and Romanticism comparatively, right? So in Neoclassical age, the poets heavily relied on the ancient poets of Greece and Rome, while in the Romantic age, the poets relied on Middle Ages and Oriental themes. Second, in Neoclassical poetry, order, balance, outward structure of poetry is more important, although emotion is too often absent. While in Romantic poetry, emotion and imagination are the most important things. The Neoclassical literature is entirely the literature of reason and satire, whereas the Romantic poetry and broadly Romantic literature is the literature of passion. It is full of mysticism and it is full of lyrics and ballads. Right? In Neoclassical age, the poets blindly imitated the ancient masters of Greece and Rome. But in Romantic age, the Romantic poets gave importance to poetic experience, to expression, and to inner spontaneity of the poet. Let us, dear friends, now try to understand the background of Romanticism and try to understand William Wordsworth as a critic, keeping in view this background. So the first thing that we need to understand is that the Romantic poetry comes as a reaction to Neoclassical poetry, right? So broadly, Neoclassical age covers three distinct periods: Restoration period, then Augustan age, and then age of Dr. Johnson. So Neoclassical age broadly is a period from 1660 to 1798. And Romantic period in the history of English literature is considered to be a period that begins from 1798 till 1830. So, the Romantic poetry comes as a reaction to Neoclassical poetry. especially the kind of poetry that Alexander Pope wrote. For example, The Rape of the Lock, a poem that conforms all the rules and regulations of writing poetry of the times, but at the same time a kind of poetry that lacks the inner emotion. Right? So romantic poetry comes as a reaction to neoclassical poetry. This is one thing. Then romantic poetry also comes as a reaction to industrial revolution. Now, in the history of Europe, the period from 1789 to 1799 is considered to be a period of industrial revolution. Big factories were established, urbanization was taking place, villages were being vacant, and the romantic poets did not like the industrial revolution. So industrial revolution also made a big impact on the romantic poets, because they didn't like the present around them. The romantic poets exulted in the medieval ages. The romantic poets exulted in nature. Right? And the third influence, the third thing that is very important for us to know is a political event. The French Revolution. The French Revolution took place during 1789 to 1799. What was the impact of the French Revolution? It was the end of monarchy, and the democratic principles spread all over Europe. The importance of the hoi polloi, the importance of the common man enjoyed the center stage, and the romantic poets, and especially Wordsworth, exulted in description of the common people. Right? So now, after making a comparative study of neoclassicism and romanticism, after discussing the formative influences on the romantic age, we are focusing on William Wordsworth as a critic. And we are going to discuss his preface that establishes him as a leading romantic poet. Right? So, what is Wordsworth's contribution to poetry? Right? So, if I simplify the whole contribution of Wordsworth to English poetry, then I would say emotion plus simplification of poetry. Emotion plus simplification of poetry. This is the contribution of Wordsworth as a romantic poet to English poetry. He emphasized emotion, that emotion is very much important in poetry. And he emphasized simplicity in poetry as a sort of reaction to the neoclassical poetry that was over embellished. Right? So the year 1798 is a very significant year in the history of English poetry and English criticism. What happened in the year 1798? Wordsworth and Coleridge, the two great poets, the two friends, the two neighbors also, they came out with a collection of poems called Lyrical Ballads. The year was 1798. And in this collection, there were 19 poems by Wordsworth, and there were 4 poems by Coleridge. So both of the great poets came out with a collection, and they entitled the collection as Lyrical Ballades. Now mark the title of the book, Lyrical Ballades. Not ballads, but there is adjective, lyrical. And here the emotion is implied, lyrical. And ballades, because romantic age is an age that is connected with the common people. And ballad has been a poetic form that has been a part of the mainstream poetry and the folk tradition of poetry also. Right? So they came out with a title, and the title itself is revolutionary in a great sense, Lyrical Ballades. So the first edition came in 1798. But we are concerned with the second edition. The second edition came in 1800. And this is a very significant edition for us, because in this edition, Wordsworth introduced preface, which became a manifesto of romanticism in English poetry. So in the second edition, Wordsworth came out with a preface, right? And what is preface? Preface is a sort of essay in which Wordsworth theorizes poetry from romantic viewpoint. So preface is a sort of explanation by Wordsworth of poetry in general and of his poetry in particular from romantic angle, right? So in the second edition, Wordsworth wrote the preface, and as I said, the second edition was published in the year 1800, right? And in the third edition, right, the edition which came in 1803, the extension of Wordsworth ideas was placed, right? So we are connected chiefly with the second edition and the third edition, in which Wordsworth expounds his ideas of poetry, right? So what are the ideas of Wordsworth as a poet? And what is a poet according to him? And what is poetry according to him? Right? So we try to understand now Wordsworth's basic ideas as a critic. What has he to say about the poet? What has he to say about poetry? Right? Now, Wordsworth, in the inception of the preface, declares that his collection of poems, Lyrical Ballades, that was published in 1798 was an experiment. So what sort of experiment was it? So Wordsworth says it was an experiment to test the public reception of his poems. So he says he wanted to test how people react to the poetry, the sort of poetry that he has written. Because he claims that he has written quite a different type of poetry than the neoclassical poetry. Right? So in this way, Wordsworth says that his poetry is a sort of experiment. And what sort of experiment was it? It was an experiment to test the public reaction towards his poetry. And Wordsworth, from his experience now, claims that the experiment was successful. because the sort of experimental poetry, the sort of new poetry that he penned down was successful in the public. But Wordsworth feels the need to explain his theory of poetry, and that is why in the second edition of Preface to Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth expounds his own views on poetry. Right? So, who is a poet? Wordsworth asks the question, and Wordsworth tries to explain his own philosophy of a poet. Who is a poet? So Wordsworth believes that the poet is a man speaking to man. The poet is a man speaking to man. And here Wordsworth gives his own philosophy of what a poet is. The poet is not a recluse. The poet does not separate himself from other people, ordinary people, and sets his task of writing a poem. His poetry is not at all a monologue, but his poetry is a dialogue with the ordinary people. And that is why Wordsworth believes and affirms that a poet is a man speaking to man. That is to say, a poet is always connected to his community. A poet is always connected to his own people. Right? Then Wordsworth tries to explain his philosophy of poetry, his ideas of poetry. He says that the principal aim, his principal aim is to choose incidents and situations from common life, number one. Right? So he says as a poet, right, his principal aim is to choose incidents and situations from common life. From common life means from the life of ordinary people. Right? To choose incidents and situations from common life. And then what to do after choosing the incidents from the common life? Then to describe them, that is to say, to describe the situation, okay, and incidents in selection of language really used by men. So to select a language, here comes the role of the poet. The poet is expected to choose incidents and situations from common life. Then what will the poet do? The poet is expected to describe the incidents and situations from common life in a selection of language. In a selection of language really used by man. So the poet will select the language. Okay? From what kind of language? From that kind of language which is really used by man, which is really used by ordinary people. And the poet will throw over the incidents and situations once chosen for his poetry a certain coloring of imagination. That means the poet will make his poem colorful by his own imagination. So this is what Wordsworth claims that he has done as a poet. And this is what the poet must do. Number one, to choose incidents and situations from common life. Number two, to describe them in selection of language which is used by ordinary people. And number three, to throw over them certain coloring of imagination. Right? So this is how Wordsworth thinks of the role of the poet, and he strongly holds that the language of peasantry must be used by the poet, because the language of peasantry is pure and it is in constant communication to nature. The language of peasantry, the language of ordinary people who are working, who are just laboring on the farm, the language of ordinary people, the poet must select from this kind of language which is spoken by ordinary people, because this kind of language, okay, is very apt for poetry, because these kind of simple people are in constant communication to nature. So by saying so, Wordsworth indirectly opposes the kind of neoclassical poetry which was over embellished, and consequently which was too often too abstruse and too difficult for ordinary people to understand. Right? So the first point, let us remember, Wordsworth emphasizes common life as a subject of poetry. Common life means life of ordinary people. Right? Now the second main point that Wordsworth talks about is poetic process, the process of writing poetry. And here comes the famous definition of Wordsworth of poetry. All good poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. So this is an oft quoted definition by Wordsworth on poetry. Right? So all good poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. Dear friends, try to understand the way Wordsworth has given the definition of poetry. It's a romantic definition of poetry as opposed to the neoclassical definition of poetry or neoclassical theory of poetry. So, for the neoclassical poets, poetry was imitation of the ancient masters of Greece and Rome. So they just followed all the rules and regulations that the ancient masters had laid. Right? So neoclassical poetry, the source of neoclassical poetry was in the past. Ancient masters of Greece and Rome. Outward. Old poets and writers from Greece and Rome. But here, Wordsworth looks inwards and he says, all good poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. So all good poetry is spontaneous. Spontaneous means that which comes from within. That which comes from the heart of the poet. So the poet does not imitate, a romantic poet does not imitate as the neoclassical poets do. But for the romantic poet, poetry comes from within. So Wordsworth says, all good poetry is spontaneous and overflow, flux. Overflow of what? Of powerful feelings. Not just feelings, but Wordsworth has added an adjective. Powerful feelings. And then what sort of powerful feelings? Recollected in tranquility. That is to say, the poet has already meditated on these powerful feelings in a peaceful, blissful state. So this is a new definition of poetry. This is altogether a new definition of poetry in comparison to the neoclassical age, in which poetry was thought of just as a sort of imitation of the ancient masters of Greece and Rome. Right? So how is the poetic process according to Wordsworth's theory of poetry? Let us try to understand that. Right? So first comes observation. The poet observes a particular incident or a particular situation. Right? Then comes recollection. Whatever the poet has observed becomes a part of poet's memory, recollection. Then filtering. From the memory, whatever is insignificant is omitted, whatever is insignificant is left out, and whatever is significant is stored, saved and meditated upon. Right? And then comes, after lots of meditation, there comes spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, where the poet takes pen and paper and pens down his powerful feelings on paper. So this is Wordsworthian theory of poetic process. Wordsworth gives importance again and again to feelings. And he says and believes feelings give importance to action and situation, and not action and situation to feelings. And to explicate this, Wordsworth gives examples from his two ballads, The Reverie of Poor Susan and Childless Father. In, for example, The Reverie of Poor Susan, it is the feeling of Susan for her village, for her native place, for her cottage, for the river that flows nearby her village. That when she hears a beautiful bird sing, she is lost in the past. She is lost in the village. So basically, Susan has got that feeling for Mother Nature, for a village, that when she hears a beautiful bird sing, she is lost in the past. So Wordsworth gives importance to feeling and says feeling gives importance to action and situation. So the action of Susan, from the action of Susan to be lost in the past from the present springs from her feeling for her native place. And that is why Wordsworth here again and again emphasizes that feelings give importance to action and situation and not action and situation to feelings. Similarly, in The Childless Father, at the end of the poem, Timothy, with a tear on his cheek, leaves for the forest, for the feast. So why this action of having a tear on his cheek? Because already Timothy has got that feeling that his dear children are now dead. His last child has also died 6 months back. So the tearful situation of Timothy is an outcome of his feeling as a father. So Wordsworth emphasizes that feelings are important, feelings are central, and feelings are the main thing, not action and situation. Indirectly, Wordsworth here tries to counter-argue the Aristotelian tradition which emphasizes plot in a work of art. which emphasizes plot and the arrangement of situations, the arrangement of incidents in a work of art, right? So here Wordsworth says no, not plot, not situation, right? Not action, but feelings are important in poetry, because Wordsworth's whole view, whole understanding, whole explanation of poetry is completely different from tradition, and he views poetry from romantic angle, right? The third major theme that we are discussing is poetic diction. Now Wordsworth makes a distinction between the language of ordinary people and the language of the poet. He does not say that the poet uses directly the language of ordinary people, because the language of ordinary people too often might be dull, too often might be even vulgar. So Wordsworth emphasizes the role of the poet, and he emphasizes the selection from the language which is spoken by ordinary people. And Wordsworth emphasizes certain coloring of imagination in the process of writing poetry. So okay, the language that the poet must use is the language of ordinary people, but the poet cannot and should not use the language of ordinary people verbatim. He should select. There is a process of selection, and there is the coloring of imagination by dint of which a poet can write a poem, right? So Wordsworth says that he has always tried to write his poems by selecting from the language ordinary people speak, right? And he says this selection has saved him from using words and phrases and figures of speech which are common inheritance of poets. That is to say, instead of traditionally using the sort of words and phrases that the poets have always been using, the language of ordinary people has provided Wordsworth with fresh words, with certain sort of freshness of expression. And second, he sees advantage in using and selecting from the ordinary people's language, in that he believes that using ordinary people's language saves him from using that sort of phrases that have become very vulgar by overuse of bad poets. So bad poets have used certain words and phrases repeatedly, and they have introduced certain sort of vulgarity. But Wordsworth says, I am not using these kind of traditional words and phrases. Rather, I am using the language of the ordinary people, and I have made a selection from the language of the ordinary people. And I have experienced the advantages of using the language and selecting from the language of the ordinary people. Right? So, Wordsworth, in this way, advocates the language of ordinary people. The poet must select from the language of ordinary people. But the idea that has made Wordsworth very controversial is his idea of poetry and prose. According to Wordsworth, there is no essential difference between the language of prose and that of metrical composition. Wordsworth says there is no essential difference between the language of prose and that of poetry. And many critics and scholars have found this argument too much. In fact, Coleridge believed that there is essential, inevitable and significant difference between the language of prose and that of poetry. The poet uses meter. The poet uses rhyme. And the poet has got poetic license. Right? The poet can use his language in quite a different manner, and that makes the poet's poetry different from the work of prose. But here Wordsworth ultimately wanted to say that ultimately, whether a poet or a writer, whether a writer of metrical composition or a prose writer, ultimately uses words, ultimately uses language. And that is why Wordsworth says that there is no essential difference between the language of prose and that of poetry. Right? But Wordsworth rejects poetic diction. And here poetic diction in particular means the kind of diction which the neoclassical poets have used. They have used over-embellished language. And this kind of over-embellished language is not apt for poetry. Because according to Wordsworth, the reader has to willy-nilly follow the poet in reading the sort of poetry that uses over-embellished language. And that is why Wordsworth rejects poetic diction. And on the other hand, he emphasizes and appreciates the importance of rhyme in poetry. He emphasizes and appreciates the importance of meter in poetry. And he believes that rhyme and meter make poetry more beautiful, especially to the ear. And he himself gives an example. Take for example a passage from Richardson's Clarissa, and take some lines from some Shakespeare's plays. And we love to recite the lines from Shakespearean play because the lines are full of rhyme. Whereas a passage from Richardson's novel may fail to appeal us to the level a Shakespearean play appeals. Right? So, Wordsworth sees benefits in using rhyme and meter in poetry. But at the same time, Wordsworth rejects poetic diction. And in particular, Wordsworth rejects the kind of poetic diction that the neoclassical poets have employed. Right? So, Wordsworth believes as a critic that poetry writing is a very serious business. There is always a serious purpose behind writing a poem. So, poem is not just for amusement for the reader. A poem is not just a pastime for the reader. But poem is something very serious, very significant. Something very serious and significant. Something which is written with a very significant and serious purpose. Right? So this is the real significance and function of poetry. that poetry must communicate its idea and emotion to the reader. This is what Wordsworth believes. And that is why Wordsworth believes that to judge a poet is not every reader's cup of tea. Only those readers who are extremely talented, only those readers who have got a sense of judging poetry can judge a particular poem. But overall, Wordsworth believes that he has penned a new kind of poetry. He has penned an experimental poetry. He has written a sort of poetry that is altogether different from the previous age, that is to say the neoclassical age. My dear friends, the significance of Wordsworth's preface in the history of English criticism is that this preface is considered to be a manifesto of romantic revival in English poetry. And this preface has already established Wordsworth as the leading poet of the romantic revival in England. My dear friends, when Wordsworth wrote this preface, he was around 30. And at this age, he was already an established poet in the history of English poetry.